Hit the ground running with the most revolutionary personal training program ever developed. The National Academy of Sports Medicine, the #1 choice for fitness professionals, makes it quick, easy, and affordable to learn on the go. Be your own boss and start transforming lives from 9 to 99 with the all-new Certified Personal Training Program only at NASM.org.
You are listening to the NASM-CPT podcast with Rick Ritchie, the official podcast of the National Academy of Sports Medicine.
Welcome to the NASM-CPT podcast. My name is Rick Ritchie. I want to welcome everybody and to kind of go over a few things I want to talk about today. And one is just kind of historically looking at NASM. We've been through a lot of changes. We've seen iterations of the CPT, the Certified Personal Trainer Program, come and go. We've done updates and we've really kind of twisted and turned and updated and gotten new content and things like that. But really, it's just been an update to the content that we started with from when we started with the OPT model. And so what we're going to talk about today is a very big transition in the life of the NASM-CPT product. And that product is our Certified Personal Training Program. And what's so big about what we're doing right now as we transition from CPT 6 to CPT 7, the new version, the new iteration, totally different. It is a complete redo. It's not just let's update and plug in some new sources cited for this and add a few more things. Like, it's apparently a complete redo. And when I say apparently, it's because I talked to these two gentlemen that are with me today. I've got Brian Sutton and I've got Andrew Payne. And unfortunately, we do not have Ian Montel, who was supposed to be with us today, but unfortunately there was an issue with scheduling. And I'm sorry not to have Ian, but Brian, Andrew, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
So Brian, give me a little bit of understanding. We had a conversation within the last few months about updates to the OPT model, but I didn't know that the updates to the OPT model were a part of a bigger, grander update to the NASM-CPT going from 6 to 7. So what's happening?
Yeah, it's been 2 years plus in the making is essentially what happened. We knew we wanted to update OPT and integrate some of the newer science, specifically like behavioral sciences into it. There's also a lot of research on like strength and hypertrophy and different elements. So we knew we wanted to update OPT. At the same time, our CPT program, Certified Personal Trainer, was up for reaccreditation. It's always on a 5-year cycle. So anytime we have to get reaccredited, we look at the program itself, like, okay, where are areas for improvement? So it was the perfect timing perspective, like, why don't we update CPT and OPT at the same time, and then they could both be released together? So that's essentially what we've been doing for the last couple of years.
Let me ask you a question regarding that, which is, you said, how do we get better? How do we update it? What do we know? And so my question is, how do you get that information? Do you get that information from a bunch of people that work at NASM saying, we think this is a good idea, we should do this? Do you get it from the instructors? Do you get it from people that are certified? How do you come up with what could be updated?
Yeah, great question. And I think this is obviously where Ian Montel's expertise would have came in nicely, but his team is in charge of the market research. So they go out and they look at the survey results, because we have end of course surveys, but then they also are attending trade shows and workshops and industry events and talking to people, hosting focus groups. And so it's the combination of all of that plus feedback we got from our student success team, the basically the tutors who are on the front lines helping people every day learn the content. Okay. We talk to our sales department, our customer service department, and then we even went beyond that. We talked to professors who teach the content at different universities. And so we gathered all that feedback, and it took a really long time to really figure out, okay, based on all of this feedback, what are the common themes that we're seeing? And then from there, then we worked as a team to figure out the best ways to implement some of those changes.
All right. Well, with that being said, tell us who you are and what you do. You seem to know a lot about this, but tell everybody who you are, and then we'll get to Andrew and ask that same question.
Sure. So my name is Brian Sutton. I'm a content production manager for NASM. Been with NASM since 2004. So I've helped develop a lot of the educational programs that we offer, like CPT, Certified Nutrition Coach, and a lot of the other programs that we've offered. So I've been doing this for quite a long time, and it's been a wonderful ride. I have a formal academic programs, that I went through and got my master's, working on a PhD. But more than anything, it's been in the trenches, and just working with NASM for the last 15 plus years. So it's been a wonderful ride, and I honestly, I got a dream job, so I really love what I do.
That's awesome. And real quick, I'm really interested in this because you've been doing it for a long time. Anybody that has any of the CPT textbooks, pretty much, you're going to see Brian's name on there. He's going to be on the cover or the inside cover. You'll see his name. He's been doing it for a while. My question to you, Brian, is what has changed in the process of all of this? Because I'm pretty sure what we do now and what we did 15 years ago aren't even similar.
Yeah, it's not. We've grown as a company, so that's afforded us to have certain advantages that we didn't have 15 plus years ago. One, we have connections with a lot of the brightest minds in the industry, much more so than we did, as we were developing. So individuals who are experts and researchers in physical therapy and rehabilitation, individuals who are experts in strength and conditioning, nutrition, behavior change, and exercise psychology. So we have all these contacts with all these different experts in their fields, and we're able to bring them in. We also have a full staff of instructional designers. Thankfully, I've gone through a lot of instructional design training myself. Andrew is an instructional designer, and we have other instructional designers on our staff. So now it's not just content experts writing content, but it's the integration. It's a combination of getting the best content, but then creating it in a way that improves learning. Because we can provide the best content, but if someone doesn't understand what the heck we're saying, it really doesn't matter. If they're not retaining the information, then it's all a moot point. So that's where we've evolved, is the matching, the integration of instructional design with content, and the newest and greatest science out there. And then above and beyond that, one more step is that now we have even fancier integration of technologies, because it is online learning. We've integrated some wonderful new tools to make the learning even easier for someone who's going through it, and make it fun, make it almost like edutainment rather than just rigorous study all the time.
I know that you have a lot of things that go on in your history and your background. And one of the things that has always been really focused on with NASM is systems. We need systems in order to implement things. And systems allow us a path, it allows us a guide, and it also allows us to scale. And
Sure.
You've been wonderful with that. And now we've got new systems with things that Andrew probably is a lot more familiar with through his background and his education. So Andrew, tell us about these systems of delivery and who you are, what you do, and about the updates that we can see in the new CPT-7.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Rick. So to start, I'm Andrew Payne. I am one of the instructional designers on the NASM product team, and kind of took over about a year ago as the lead instructional designer here on CPT. So Brian did mention one of those big things was the technology upgrade. And even though I'm not personally the one programming that, a number of years ago, we made a big decision to try to break out of the standard sort of course delivery box. So, anyone out there that, and actually this is a much better analogy now after COVID, it seems, anybody who's learning right now is now familiar with online learning. And well before there was a big world pandemic that forced everybody into that realm, we were really trying to pioneer new ways to deliver courses to the students. So anyone who's gone through any of our iterations of the program from CPT 1 all the way through 6 has, you can see different iterations of that tech getting better and better. And now we've really got one that's a pretty amazing tool. Instead of going off the shelf and finding another company that potentially could have given us a website builder tool that lets us deliver electronic books and videos, we made a real big, important decision to bring all that stuff in-house. So we have a dedicated team of tech guys, web programmers who help us on the learning side create and implement the tools from scratch so that we can present our content to students in the absolute best way that we know how to do it. There's a lot of tools out there that universities, high schools use that just sort of put the content in a nice, linear order, and you kind of just click through, and it can be really boring. It can be, a little bit tedious at times in a lot of different online learning scenarios. And so we really set out with a goal, and we kind of piloted it with our nutrition program. And CPT now is the first big major flagship that we're building into this whole new course delivery that basically allows a student to start on page 1, click go. And if they really wanted to, all they have to do is hit the right arrow on their keyboard for the entire time of the course. And it will take them through in a constructivist way that starts them nice and high level and just builds and builds and builds and builds. And by those final chapters, you've taken all the information at the beginning and you can put it all together into a final usable thing that you can take out into the world and use with clients. And that's something that really is sorely missing in education. Starting with high school all the way on, textbooks were really just a chunk of information. And, your professor or your teacher would say, hey, read this part of chapter 1 and then go read that part of chapter 2. And then we'll come back together and do a little lecture. And here's your quiz. It just kind of uses the book as a reference material. And we really struck out on this one with the mission to create a course that can just go start to finish. Really to kind of back up as what is instructional design, and it's almost a lighthearted version of social engineering. We want to do the study thinking for you, for the students, so that the one thing you're interested in when you buy our product, which is fitness, which is learning everything you need to learn to be able to get out into the gym, work with clients, or just work with yourself. We don't want you to have to stress over how to study or how to best move through it. And so, here with CPT, we really had the ability to, from the ground up, starting with blank white paper, to really start thinking about, how are we presenting this course? The science of fitness, the human body, that's not changing drastically year to year, decade to decade. Humans evolve slow. The research does continue to come out and continues to shore up things that were discovered back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And so we didn't want to reinvent the wheel because human fitness is human fitness. And so a real big space that we had that ability to, push this course forward is in how it was delivered.
All right, let me tell a story real quick about when I was in college in my undergrad and I was taking my bio classes, and I took a class called Comparative Vertebrate Morphology. It sounds as exciting as it was. It truly opened my eyes to the difference between a brilliant person and a bad teacher. And, I look at this guy and I think, man, he's brilliant. He's been published many times in biology, and he studies water striders, and he's been that's a big deal for the university, but he was not a good teacher, which should also be a big deal for the university, because their job isn't just to put out publications, but it's to teach. And we got lost a lot. I remember, if you guys know me quite well, and you know that I do a lot of communications work, and I did one thing where I sat down and I was like, I'm going to count how many times this gentleman says, and after 2 minutes, I'd counted 72 and decided that this is not worthwhile trying to continue to count this. So it was so distracting. Here's the thing. Here's what I'm trying to say. Brilliant person, great content, not a great teacher. And I think that we need to look at that as an education company, and we say we can have really great content, but if we can't deliver that content greatly, if we can't support and supply that information the best way people receive that information, then as an education company, we're not actually, getting to bar, not even getting over it. We're just not even getting to it. So with that being said, I know this user interface is starting to take shape, and it's been developed for a long time. Talk to me about this stuff. Like, what's the difference between CPT 6 and CPT 7 in both content and delivery? Whoever wants to take that question.
Yeah, I'll start with it there. A big thing, and it actually really touches on what you just said, Rick, is that you kind of have two different realms involved when you're presenting a course. You have your content experts, the individuals who are doing the research, who are out there in the labs, writing peer-reviewed papers, pushing the science forward. That is a very focused realm. And not to say anything negative about anybody who contributed to the product, but really out there is, someone who's used to writing scientific journal articles. When you put a task to them that says, hey, we need to write this for this 10th or 11th grade level, a lot can get missed in that translation. And so that's where the instructional design process comes out from the ground up, is working with hand in hand, a learning expert on one side and a content expert, whatever that very specific realm is, whether it's resistance training or cardio or nutrition, you name it. And having those dual perspectives come together and go back and forth, draft after draft with, you ask that subject matter expert and you say, hey, I want all the information on this based on this table of contents that we provided. Fill it all in. And then the learning experts come in on the backside and red pen that all up and say, hey, let's rework this. Let's talk about this first, because, if you talk about Z before B, students won't know what's going on in between. So you have to make sure you layer everything. And that was, combined with the delivery system. That's where instructional design kind of comes in from the front side. So I know Brian has something more to say on that than me. So.
Yeah, I mean, it really was the marriage between instructional design and content. We had 19 contributing authors and 20 different peer reviewers for the textbook itself. But every chapter, it would be written by a content expert, peer reviewed by another content expert, and then it would also be peer reviewed again by me, and then it would also would go through an instructional design peer review, right? Because no matter how good the content is, if we're not teaching it in an effective manner, then we've lost the student. Our goal is to teach the best content we possibly can, ensuring that the learner is always retaining and understanding what we're saying. So there's a unique science to it. In providing call outs, providing analogies. There's something called scaffolding, which is basically you start with a small premise and you keep building and building and building. So by the time they get to the end, they've learned all this cool stuff. And they're like, but you can't start with something advanced. You got to meet the learner where they're at. So that was one of the things that we've done. And then of course, a lot of fun multimedia within the program itself. Lots of really cool videos and animations and study guides and practice questions to help the learner along. So And probably one of the other small things that we haven't discussed is we took an element called micro learning. Instead of just providing a big block of content and then providing a quiz at the end, which is really hard for someone to, one, get through all that content, right? You're going to have some fatigue, and then assess them. We provide it in small chunks. So we provide a small chunk of content, and then there's a knowledge check, basically a really short quiz to ensure how the learner did. And we keep building on it. So it doesn't feel like this massive thing all the time. It's broken up into really small, manageable chunks to help the learner through the program.
Let's stay on that for a moment, because I know when I was writing content, not for CPT-6, but for another product that we were working on, we had to do the quizzes. And at the end of the quizzes, you have this A, B, C, or D. And then, you select the right answer. And then I needed to write something that was like, oh, this is why it's the right answer. And then I delivered it back, and they sent it back to me, and they were like, now, why are all the other ones wrong? And I was like, that's a lot of work. So,
yes.
Yes, it is.
But if you're on the other end taking the quiz and you select D instead of C, it tells you why D is wrong and maybe where you can find the content within the construct of the material to go back and identify where you missed and how to look it up. Why? Well, that's why you put us through so much stress so that people on the receiving end can really get a lot more clarity. When did that start happening, and what is the feedback that you get when you do the quizzes that way, or even the exams or tests that way?
Yeah, so regarding the quizzes, it does take a long time to create, right? It has to be in a certain order, so we got to make sure that the content is 100% finalized before we could ever write a quiz around it. And then we've all gone through, and this is kind of getting techie, so I apologize. We've all gone through psychometric training on how to write items, because there's lots of rules in place for effective item writing. Item is just a synonym for quiz question. So we've all gone through that. But the reason why we provide the feedback, especially on the incorrect options, they're called distractors, is because then without telling the learner the right answer, it helps them. It's another learning opportunity, basically. It's like, I'll start with something very basic, like how many grams or how many calories are in a gram of protein, right? Something like that. And there's different options. Someone selects 10, be like, no, 10 is not the right answer. The number of calories in a gram of protein is slightly less than that. Refer back to this area for more information. So it understands why they're not getting the right answer, and then it's that learning opportunity, right? We always want to provide learning opportunities for the student as they go through the program. So by the time they are about to sit for the test, they feel ready, because that's really important. So
that is important. Go ahead, Andrew. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to piggyback off that a little bit. And it's sort of in regards to the implementation of quizzes, and what does the quiz mean for a student as they're moving through the course? And historically, a quiz was that scary thing. Worried about the professor giving you a pop quiz when you come in. We took all that pressure out of this course and just completely did away with it. And now every single quiz, every practice test within this course is meant to be taken multiple times. Just to kind of speak to the sheer amount of practice that we've built into this with these test questions that literally have feedback for not just the correct answer as to, hey, you got that right, this is why. We tell you every single wrong answer. And so 23 chapters in the book. We have a 10-question quiz at the end of each chapter. So you would think, okay, NASM wrote 230 test questions to be able to fill that all in. But that's not the case. We actually have over 50 test questions for every single chapter. And then every one of those quizzes will randomly build themselves from those greater pools. So a student can actually go in and they have access to literally thousands of practice test questions now. So instead of the traditional means of, you go through the test, you get that little 10-question quiz, and you passed it and you move on to the next, and you think, oh, I have no reason to go back to that chapter to keep studying because I passed the quiz. But what we've learned within the learning community is that that's almost a false sense of confidence that a lot of learning programs put in by giving you this sort of false sense that, oh yeah, you mastered this because you passed this 10-question quiz. And for a course that is intended to take a good 15 weeks of your life to really get ready for that, what is quite a difficult certification exam. There's a reason why NASM does continue to hold the bar as the top certification program out there, and that's because we do hold our students to a very high standard. And so to get those students to that point, we want to give every single possible tool that we can give every single student, no matter whether you've purchased the biggest bundle of packages from us or whether you just wanted to come in and do just a CPT. We give you everything to sort of hold your hand almost all the way through, so that each chapter you can practice it multiple times and be constantly learning with those activities, so that the quiz now becomes just another means of studying, another means of solidifying that knowledge deeper and deeper into your brain.
All right. Well, talk to me a little bit about then, and this may be more Brian, but we did discuss a little bit about updates in the OPT model. Brian, can you address that again and in brief, but then also talk about the updates and the cardio model that has taken place between, from 6 to CPT 7?
Yeah. Starting with OPT, that was, over a year long endeavor. We started with collecting a group of experts in many different niche fields, whether it was physical therapy or strength and conditioning or group exercise or mind and body. Anyway, we brought all these experts together to talk about their methods of programming, right? And then we also talked about OPT. And through these conversations, we came out with some key points that we wanted to include in the updated version of OPT. And so it was about a year-long process of implementing those changes and then beta testing them with actual clients, getting the feedback and making sure that everything was copacetic. And so there were some major changes to OPT. The foundation is still the same. It's still 5 phases, 3 levels: stabilization, strength, and power. So that hasn't changed. So the meat of OPT is still there, but we've tweaked a few things. We added in some behavioral change type of stuff to OPT. Like, for example, now in the new workout template, there's something called client's choice, where the client, after they've done the workout programmed by the fitness professional, they get to choose a couple of their favorite exercises. So that will help increase adherence, right? Yeah. So we've done a few things like that. We've updated some acute variables based on the latest and greatest science, especially regarding hypertrophy training. So those are the major differences in OPT, is the integration of behavior change, some new acute variables based on the science out there. And then there's some small nomenclature differences. For example, phase 3 was called hypertrophy training. We changed the name to muscular development training to be because that's really what we're doing, right? Hypertrophy, usually when we say hypertrophy, we're talking about bigger muscles, but it could be enlargement of the heart or any other organ, right? Because hypertrophy just means to grow and enlarge. So we're like, why don't we call it exactly what it is? It's muscular development training, which was actually, ironically, the name of it back in the early 2000s before we changed it to hypertrophy. Now we're just changing it back. So there's a few things regarding that. And then the cardio model has also changed, and that was a fun endeavor. What we did with it is update the way we program based on metabolic markers rather than relying strictly on heart rate, right? So in the past, it was oh, okay, if I'm in zone 1, I'm at 65 to 75% of my maximal heart rate, which is fine. That's valid. But there are other ways that we can measure intensity besides just heart rate. So using something called the talk test to identify someone's ventilatory threshold, we will use that then to identify how intense they're working. So, and then also RPE. So it's not just based on heart rate and have to wear a heart rate monitor to always identify how hard someone's working during their cardio program. We can use the talk test and measure where their ventilatory threshold is. We actually have 2 tests, one for measuring VT1, one for measuring VT2. It's all discussed. But basically, we're going to use the person's own unique individual metabolic markers to identify how intensely they're working. And then the cardio model is based on that. So now it's 5 stages from low intensity to really high intensity interval and lots of in between. And so this program is based on the newest and greatest science out there. And I think it's wonderful because it does use the client's own unique individual metabolic markers. So if I'm doing a VT1 test and I see like let's say they're running on treadmill and at 6.5 miles per hour, and I perform the talk test and I realize, that's where they're at VT1, then I could use that as my gauge to measure their intensity throughout the workout. So those are some of the unique science updates for CPT. But we update it every single chapter.
And when you say updated, do you mean like just like plugged in newer sources that said it, or what do the updates in every single chapter mean?
Yeah, it depends on the chapter itself. Okay. Some chapters were complete rewrites where we rewrote it from scratch, and then other chapters were where we updated elements within the chapter, but not the entire thing. All the references have been updated throughout the whole book. So that's number one. So we are referencing the latest and greatest science out there. But for example, if we're updating a section on the skeletal system and we're talking about, I don't know, different types of joints, right? You got ball and socket, you got hinge, right? That's still the same. That's never going to change, right? There's always 4 chambers in the heart. So that information, what we did, instead of changing the content itself, because you can't change that content, what we did is we improved how we write the content. We improved the teaching around it. And then other aspects like nutrition, supplementation, OPT, cardio training, flexibility training, core, balance, plyo, SAQ. We updated a lot of that because there's a ton of science regarding those modalities and forms of exercise. So that's where a lot of the new science was updated. We also updated a lot of information regarding behavior change, exercise psychology, professional development. So like how to write a resume, how to sell, how to market yourself, how to find a job. All those different type of things were also updated in the program as well.
Brilliant. I love that. Are there any updates with, I know just in even the past several years, so even before CPT 6 came out, from there to now, there's a lot of new digital wearable things. Did you talk about any of the wearables and some of the technology and feedback we can get from those things?
We did. There's a chapter called Introduction to Exercise Modalities. And so it talks about all the different, most popular forms of equipment, right? From your strength training equipment, whether it's dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells, medicine balls, proprioceptive equipment. So whether that's a BOSU ball or a stability ball or any of those things. And then we also added newer modalities that weren't discussed in the 6th edition, like battle ropes, wearables. So that information has been updated in that chapter. So yeah, we have a whole section on wearables and what they do and how they can benefit someone if they choose to use a wearable.
Okay, so that leads me to another question. We've got all these great new modalities, but what if I don't know how to use those things, right? Like I just read about battle ropes, or I read about this. Am I limited now to go onto YouTube to figure out what that looks like?
No, there's a reason why we ordered the chapters the way we did. So by the time they get to the exercise modalities chapter, they've already learned about flexibility training, core training, balance training, plyometric training, speed, agility, quickness training, and resistance training, and fundamentals of program design. So now, since they have this giant foundation of how to develop exercise programs, so if I'm going to be working my core, if I'm going to be working my extremities, if I'm going to be doing cardio or stretching, whatever it is, now I can just take that tool, because all those exercise modalities, they're just a tool. And I can plug it in. It's no different than using a hammer or a screwdriver, right? It just depends on the task I'm going to do. But my task is always, I got to fix my kitchen sink, or I got to help my client lose weight. That's all the same. So modalities are just tools. And so we teach them how to use those tools based on the foundation of knowledge they've already learned throughout the program.
So through that, do we see like a how-to on how to actually perform the exercises?
We have instructional videos for every single exercise in the textbook. So so if we talk about a stretch in the stretching chapter, there's a corresponding video with an NASM master instructor and a client, and they teach you how to perform that stretch or that core exercise or that balance exercise or that resistance training exercise. So every exercise that we teach, we have an instructional video that goes along with it.
Nice, because I will say one of the bigger things with the feedback that I've gotten when people reach out to me, they'll say, I love your cueing videos. You loved your videos where you showed me how to do these exercises. Where can I find more of them? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe like, how did you learn it? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's just years and years of doing and cueing and trying to get better at it. But wouldn't it be great if somebody could teach you those things so that you have to spend all this time hitting and missing and practicing on clients, when you could learn from somebody else on really well-developed ways in order to teach and coach and cue exercise?
Yep. Yeah. So we have not only those videos, but we also completely did our photo exercise library as well. So whether you end up looking at the hard copy textbook or the digital course, they both follow the exact same flow and structure, and they share the same exact sort of the photo material that's in there for each one. So that sort of photo by photo explanations of the exercises that everyone's used to, that we've used historically for years, we just now decided to augment that so that within the course, if you want to see how to do a plank, there's a video of one of the NASM master instructors, really getting that professional experience on camera to be able to put that out there for the students. And that was something that we, going into this version, really saw as one of the opportunities to advance the program. Years from now, we've told people how to do the exercises. We've shown them all the blueprint, but then we never took them that next level to say, all right, here's actually how you'll implement this. This is what your voice tone should sound like. Here's how you're going to correct the client when they're not in the right position. And what does that look like? How does it sound? That's all built in now, right into the instruction on every single exercise. And there are lots of exercises in this program.
All right. So I've got a follow-up question, and it really comes down to this. When I was in school, I remember my first semester, I bought all the textbooks and had them with me and put them in my bag, and it was really heavy to carry around. And then I bought everything on Kindle, and I was like, this is great now because I have every single book I need with me. But some people still like the feel and the smell of a book. Is there a book that goes along with this, or are we just going to be looking at screens right now?
No, there is a physical textbook.
Okay.
Someone can purchase the book. We have different packages, right? And so it depends on the package. But if someone is inclined and really wants that physical hardbound book, which I totally get, I'm a book guy myself. So yes, there is a physical book. The digital online course looks just like the physical book. The only difference is there's also embedded multimedia and quizzing. So as Andrew was saying earlier, right, you start on page 1, you go to page 2, and you go to page 3, right, and it's just the right arrow. So it looks like you're reading the physical book online. The only difference with the online course is we have lots of just embedded multimedia interactive kind of stuff. So in the book, you'll see a key term. In the online version, you can click on it and the definition will appear. So it's just a different medium to present the exact same information. And the information is exactly the same, word for word, whether it's the digital online course or the physical textbook. The information is word for word and paginated to look exactly the same. The only difference is the online version has more study aids, because obviously a physical book can't do that. And if someone wants to, they could use both. The system will always remember where you left off if you're using the online version. So it's all there for you, and there's no getting lost. It's super simple to use.
And you can take notes on the online system. You can bookmark areas that you're on where you're like, this is really important. I'd like to come back and look at that. It picks up where you left off, but you're not stuck where you left off. It doesn't just say, no, you're here, no going back, or no jumping forward. Just like in a textbook, you can go to the content page and move forward to the behavior change section because you just heard the podcast that we did last week and you're like, I want to learn more about behavior change, and you just jump ahead, right? So you get to explore. You don't have to go necessarily linearly, even though it's designed that way as per scaffolding, like you and Andrew were talking about.
Yeah, it's meant, obviously we did have our intent as we built it, in order to, start at the beginning, learn what the CPT profession is, move into a lot of the soft skills, some of the more, what we consider to be the easier, a little bit more fun topics, before we hit you over the head with multiple chapters of hard science. But we make sure you get all the chapters of hard science before we move into the chapters that talk about how to implement that science. That's some feedback we've gotten from previous editions, is that, we would teach 40-50% of the scientific concepts up front in the exercise science chapter. But then, for example, we'd get to flexibility, and all of a sudden we were giving a whole new chunk of exercise science and foundational knowledge there before we talked about the how. This go around, we wanted to make sure that every time that we were going to present you with something of, hey, this is how you're going to do this. This is how you'll implement this in the real world with clients. We wanted that question of, well, why am I doing this, to be answered already. So we do recommend going through the normal linear flow, but everyone's coming into this program with a different background. There's people who have been in the gym for decades, and this is just, they decided this is their new career. They want to formalize it and make it something, official, and they probably know 90% of what we're teaching them already. We also have fresh out of high school, kids who just graduated high school, and this is the career they want to go into because they've been working the front desk at a gym for the last 2 years as their, side jobs. So we really wanted to cover the basis for every possible type of student that we could get. And when you're dealing with adult learning, that's a really big window, which is why we still do the book, because we have those customers that they learn the best by sitting down with a physical textbook and putting Post-it notes all over it and highlighting it and taking their own notes and doing that more traditional style of studying. And then we also have a huge chunk of students that they just love to get on their cell phone and open up the course there. And, while they're commuting or on a train or on a bus, if they live in the city, and they do their studying on the fly that way.
They can do it from their phone?
From their phone, yeah. So the entire course is fully web responsive, just like any modern website is these days. So you can get in, you can be on your laptop and have, full screen and, get the full experience that way. And you can literally just close the window, walk away from your course, go on your cell phone, log right into NASM.org the same way, and the course remembers exactly where you are, picks right up with a perfectly web responsive screen that adapts and morphs itself to the size of your cell phone or your tablet or whatever you want to watch the course on. So, 2021, there's a lot of different ways to learn. And the best way for any institution to present their content is to think about how you can have that multifaceted approach that way. So, if you want to read the book, that's fantastic. You're going to get it, like Brian said, all in the same order. The chapter 1 from start to finish is going to go in that linear order on the online program the same way. Only difference now is that, if we have a graphic, you can click on it and make it bigger. If we have a video, we put it right in line with the text, exactly where that video needs to go to break the text up, because we know, hey, they just read, 4 pages of heavy text here. Let's give them something to, keep the excitement and the flow going. And so those are all those really little decisions that we considered all the way along the line that got us now to this final, product that's ready to launch.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, let me congratulate you both on such an enormous undertaking. And I know that you two weren't the only 2 people working on this project, right? Like, this has been an immense effort by numerous people that contributed and helped to develop this. So a big shout out to both of you. Is there anything else that I'm missing or that you'd like to share about the new CPT product?
A few things, right? One, you just mentioned that it was a lot of people, and you're absolutely right. From the internal team, all of our content developers, our product managers that helped with this, to the individuals that are, that work for our publisher, the videographers and all of our vendors and copy editors and graphic artists. I mean, there were dozens and dozens of people that helped with this program. So this wasn't a fly-by-night thing. This was almost 2 years in the making. So it was a big effort. Other unique, fun things in the course. There are also podcasts. So at the end of every chapter, if someone wants to listen to a podcast summary of that chapter, that's also available.
Very cool.
So that's fun. We talked about the exercise videos. There's also lecture videos. And these lecture videos are kind of Hollywood style, really fun, a little bit quirky, to provide some of that edutainment. So if they just learned some content about food labels, there's going to, usually there's a corresponding video where someone's talking about it, but it's a little bit more fun, a little bit more jazz, right? So we have a lot of that to provide that edutainment sort of factor. Honestly, I am obviously biased, right? Because I've worked for NASM for so long, but honestly, I don't think there's another certification in the United States or frankly in the world that really does compare to what the 7th edition CPT actually is. From all the learning materials that we provide, from the Hollywood style videos that we provide, to the dynamic online system that obviously it's completely device responsive, so you can study on your mobile if you want to. All of those factors, really what CPT-7 became is a one-stop shop. So if someone wants to become a personal trainer and really learn all of the ins and outs, what it takes to be a successful personal trainer and to get certified and feel prepared for that certification, all they have to do is purchase the NASM 7th edition, and that's it. We provide all the answers. Every single answer that you need, it's right there. It's all contained in one holistic program.
There are so many sound bites in that right there, Brian. So there are many things just in your moment where we could pull it out and say, what do you think about CPT-7? And then plug in, like, this is your one-stop shop. Nobody in the country or in the world has anything compared to what CPT-7 looks like. And that's because of all the work and all the effort that you two and an entire team at NASM has done to develop and produce it. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. If people have questions about it, can they reach out and say, hey, I'm interested? What's the best way to do it? Should they reach out to you? Should they reach out to the NASM phone number or an email? What's the best way for people to inquire about CPT-7?
they could do that a few different ways. They can contact NASM directly. So was it 1-800-460-6276? Did I get that right, Andrew? I think so.
I'm going to look it up real quick.
Yeah. So reach or go to nasm.org.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a ton of information about CPT7 directly on the website. They can do an interactive chat with somebody from the website, or they can call in and talk to somebody directly. And then I will throw out my email to brian.sutton@nasm.org if someone does want more information. But obviously, the website and the phone number are probably the best areas to get more information about CPT7, particularly around pricing, packages, setting up accounts, all those sort of things. The individuals at NASM are the best resource for that.
Perfect. All right. Brian Sutton, Andrew Payne, thank you both so much for being on the show and just allowing us to better understand what this new product is like. And this would be a great opportunity if you're already CPT certified and you know people who are interested to be like, hey, here's the product they've just launched. Today might be the day for you to really make that move and to get your NASM certification, because the Certified Personal Trainer course, which is an accredited course through NASM for personal training, is updated with all the bells and whistles and all the education tools that help to really guide you and support you along the way. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I want to thank everybody out there for listening. My name is Rick Ritchie. This has been the NASM CPT podcast.
All right. Thank you.